Good morning. I'm going to start this morning with a question. Question we all love someone, right? We all have a love for people in our lives. There's people we look to, and right, we have that deep, overwhelming emotion and that deep, good feeling about the person. But what I want to ask is, what does that look like? What does it look like when you look at the person that you love? When you look at them, what does that manifest for you? How does that shape your life? How does that change the way you interact? I want you to hold on to that question as we continue in our conversations in John, as we're looking at the things that Jesus is teaching us. And we've gone through our series, right? We've been talking through this as we've been looking at what is it that Jesus is telling people, and a lot of that has been the struggle with belief. He's been talking to people about struggling with their belief, how to work through that, how to the challenge that comes with, and how he's really challenged the people he's talked to with what it takes to actually believe, and that it's not such a simple thing to just say you believe. Right? That's been the challenge throughout the book of John as we have gone through, and so I want to give you just an overview of the last. We ended in chapter 10 last week. And I want to just give a little bit of an overview of the next couple chapters before we get to where we will land today. And so we see in chapter 10, 11, we have the good shepherd. In chapter 10, that was the conversation last week. And then in chapter 11, he goes on, and his friend Lazarus passes away. This is the story of Lazarus being in the grave, and Jesus goes to him. He raises him from the dead to the marvel of all around him. He proclaims he's the resurrection and the life. We see then as he goes on that Lazarus is resurrected, and the leadership that saw this, the Pharisees, don't really like this so much because they don't like that there's some sort of proof that Jesus might be who he says he is. And so instead of rejoicing or acknowledging Jesus or anything like that, or wanting to make maybe to struggle with their belief in any way, no, they decide that they're going to kill Jesus and they're going to kill Lazarus too, because he's too much proof to be left alive. And that's their conclusion. We can't let this be. And so that again, odd decision. You see a guy come back to life, and it's too much evidence against you, so you have to try and kill him. Like, he just got raised from the dead, people. That's pretty marvelous. But anyway, we get into chapter 12, and through all this, that Jesus is now returning to Jerusalem. There's the triumphant entry in chapter 12. Jesus comes in, and everyone crying Hosanna, and he comes in for the Passover, and so we see through that whole period of time that we come to chapter 13, where we will be today. In chapter 13, we see that Jesus finds himself in the upper room. All right, this is the last meal he's to have with his disciples. And John, before we get to all the rest of Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection and all of those other amazing stories that we'll see in John, John spends a lot of time in this conversation that is to be had here in the upper room. And so for the rest of our series, we're going to be engaging this conversation he has with the disciples. So there's several parts to this that we're going to be spending time on. And we're going to be talking in this upper room, and it's an important shift in conversation that we are having as we're hearing from Jesus, because all this time Jesus has been trying to build belief and bring people to believe in him and really get them to understand the notion of what it is to believe in him. But now the conversation is a little different, because now he is in the room with his most trusted believers. Okay, his most trusted believers are sitting there with him. They believe in Jesus. They've been walking with Jesus. They still don't have a clue about things, but they believe in him, and they've held on to that belief. And so Jesus is now trying to impart to them the things that they need in order to go on and continue in their belief, and how that shapes their discipleship, after what's about to happen in the next few hours. That basically Jesus will be crucified and he'll be gone, and what that's going to mean for his disciples. And so we get to this upper room and we're having this conversation, and Jesus really, as we look at what's about to happen, he starts with a practical lesson. All right, let's look at chapter 13, 1 through 21. We'll read that whole section. It says, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, 'Lord, do you wash my feet?' And Jesus answered him, 'What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand.' And Peter said to him, 'You shall never wash my feet.' And Jesus answered him, 'If I do not wash your feet, you have no share with me.' Simon Peter said to him, 'Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head.' And Jesus said to him, 'The one who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not every one of you.' For he knew who was to betray him, that was why he said, 'Not all of you are clean.' When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, 'Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. If I am telling you this now before it takes place, then that when it does take place you may believe that I am he. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me." And so Jesus has this lesson of cleansing, of servanthood. He takes off his outer garments and wraps a towel around himself to wash their feet, and he goes about washing every one of their feet, including Judas. And that's a significant portion, if you didn't catch that he's washing Judas's feet. Not just, there's a lot of commentary on why he washes Judas's feet. Did he do it so that he might have had a chance to repent? Did he do it maybe because he wanted to show that he loves his enemies just as much as he loves the ones that his disciples that believed in him? Well, it says pretty plainly here, right? He did this to fulfill Scripture. He did this so that they would know that the one whom took the bread, the one who was there, that he lifted his heel against him, and that's a proof of prophecy. And Jesus did that so that they might understand and believe in him, because he's telling them that it happened now. Right? He makes that point out there. But Jesus says, right, this thing that I have done for you, you should also do for each other. And well, here's a question: is if Jesus washed the feet of the disciples, then why aren't we all going around washing each other's feet? Right? Why is that not the practice of today? Why do we not see that in the church? And usually when we see it in the church, it almost seems kind of phony, like disingenuous. Just, hey, I'm going to wash people's feet, and they're already clean, and they're already, the feet are already kind of there. It's just kind of a simple washing. The question really is Jesus washed their feet. Why did he wash their feet? Well, in that time, right, we know that they walked everywhere. They walked everywhere on dusty roads, and their feet got kind of dirty. And the way that they ate with one another is they kind of ate laying down at a table. And so if you're laying down at a table and you're laying next to someone, guess where your feet are? Your feet's kind of in their face, isn't it? I'd kind of want clean feet in my face if I have to be near your feet at all. And so really it's kind of like this notion, right? You better wash or you're not going to get anything to eat, right? You don't get a bite to eat. if you don't wash your feet. And so Jesus does this because there's a practical necessity here, and this was something that would be done customarily. Somebody in that household that had Jesus there was probably set to do that, and yet Jesus comes and he does it. He sits down and he sets himself to clean and wash the feet, a very dirty, grimy, and low-end job. This is for the lowest of the low. And so we're trying to, if we look at this, right, if we look at this, we might want to find ourselves a modern equivalent, right? Who does the lowest of the low job? What's the lowest of the low job that maybe I could be doing today that could satisfy the command to do as Jesus did? Well, today's modern equivalent might be that we have to take over for a robot, right? Like that might be happening in a few years, right? Because we're going to get all the robots to do those low, menial jobs, right? And so we need, come on, that's funny, guys. Like, come on, AI is coming, laugh a little bit. All right, okay. All right. So we have to take over for that. But really the question, right, is what is the command? What is it that we're looking for in how we're supposed to serve one another? And I think that the command there, I think the purpose is be a servant to the detriment of yourself. Don't look for the dirty job just so that you can say, look how lowly I am. But don't be so concerned with self that it deters your command. Serve wherever is possible, wherever is necessary, so that you can, love beyond yourself. And one thing I will say to my education and how I was trained in ministry, AIM was a really great gift in that. The Adventures and Missions program down in Lubbock was a great gift in that because it taught me that if I can do nothing else, which I can't really do anything else at that point, I was very, inexperienced. I didn't really know a lot. I couldn't really do a whole lot. But you know what I can do? I can pick up a broom. I can stack chairs. I can take out the garbage. I can do those sorts of things. It was a great training in that respect that when you go to be a servant somewhere, you just go and you do the thing that needs to get done. Just needs to get done. There's not somebody else to do it. You're the one to do it. And so service and this idea here is, what is the service that needs to be done? And don't think about your reputation. Don't think about where you stand. What's your position? Is that too low for me or not? Just get in there and serve and get that done. And that's what Jesus, I think, is communicating when he does this. But it continues on because there's more to this. There's more to this that we need to understand. And so we continue on in verse 21. In verse 21, it says, after these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. And we're going to finish that section here in a second, but I want to stop there for just a second. Because, Jesus has given this service, right? He's spent his time, he's put himself in that position, the low of the low, to serve and serve even the one who betrays. And Jesus, even as he's doing this, even as he washed the feet of Judas, even as he's doing this for the purpose that they will know the prophecy and that Scripture is going to be fulfilled, he knows that Judas is about to do this, and he knows it's already going to happen. But you know what? It's still distressing, okay? It's still distressing to Jesus to know, hey, I'm about to be betrayed, right? One of my closest believers is going to go out tonight and bring the people who are getting ready to put me through the worst of the worst thing that could ever possibly happen, and they're gonna kill me, and it's gonna be because he led them to me. That's a distressing thing, and I think that's worth noting that even though Jesus has done this thing that is really a beautiful view to his love for his disciples, it's a beautiful example of service and certainly of selflessness in that he's still distressed by it. Okay, he's still a human being who's distressed by it. And in verse 22, we continue. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. One of his disciples, whom Jesus loved, was reclining at table at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter motioned him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. And so that disciple, leaning back against Jesus, said to him, Lord, who is it? And Jesus answered, it is to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it. So when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Then after he had taken the morsel, Satan entered into him, and Jesus said to him, what you are going to do, do quickly. Now, no one at the table knew why he had said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the money bag, Jesus was telling him to buy what we need for the feast. But on the other, or that he should give something to the poor. So after receiving the morsel of bread, he immediately went out, and it was night. And so again, I don't know why this was the moment that Jesus decided to let this in. Was this a setup to get Judas out of the room so that the rest of this conversation might not include Judas? Maybe. Was it a point, a moment that he needs to declare this and set this? He needs to know it. He needs to set it up because it's got to happen, and Jesus isn't hiding from what's about to happen. And he puts it out on full display, and that sets in motion that Judas is going to go out and do what he's going to do. Maybe. I can't say I know for sure on that. I'm going to put that way. All right? I'm not so sure I know exactly why Jesus decided that. But it is interesting that as Jesus says this and sets this up, and Judas has basically been called out as a traitor amongst his fellows, that he leaves the room and he's missing for this next part. Find it interesting. Because the next part in verse 31 says, and when he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, that you have love for one another." And it's a new commandment, and I want you to press upon this, is that it's a new commandment because what's the old commandment? If this is a new commandment, there was a commandment before it. What's the old commandment? Well, if you recall, the old commandment is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength. Right? That's the command that the Israelites were given. And love thy neighbor as, you can finish, thyself, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus is proclaiming, I have a new commandment. Love as I have loved you. And that is different in kind than love thy neighbor as thyself, is it not? Because did Jesus love people? Did Jesus love his disciples as he loved himself? If he did, he probably wouldn't have gone to the cross. He probably wouldn't have done the thing. Jesus loved his disciples in spite of himself. Jesus loved his disciples more than himself, because his self was willing to be sacrificed for the sake of the others, right? For those he loved. And so a new commandment that Jesus gives is a much more powerful implication for us, that I'm supposed to love you as Jesus loved you. I'm supposed to love you as Jesus called and gave himself up for you. I'm supposed to be sacrificial. And so we come back to this service that Jesus gave. This service of washing the disciples' feet and doing the lowest job, doing the job that makes him look weak. It makes him look like the least in the room. It makes him look powerless. It makes him shamed, as it were, in terms of culture. And Jesus said, I'm going to put all of that aside because you have a need that I need to meet. You have a need that I need to meet because I have the ability to meet it. And I'm willing to put myself under ridicule to make sure your need is met. I'm willing to put myself through pain and suffering in order to make that happen. And so Jesus gives us not just that new command, but he gives us the way in which we do that. And so we finally come then to the last section of chapter 13 in verse 36, where Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus answered him, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow me afterward. And Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. And Jesus answered, will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow until you have denied me 3 times. And so we get an interesting implication there as far as what that means for Peter. All right, and Peter has this great zeal for Jesus. We've kind of known this all throughout the gospel story up until this point. We know Peter has zeal. He's zealous, and he does things that are a little overzealous, and he makes wrong statements, and he does things. He kind of puts his foot in his mouth. He always kind of puts himself out there. and then finds out that he was wrong in some way. And so when we come to the Peter and Peter having this zeal, I want to go where you go, Jesus. I want to lay my life down for you. I want to be this example. I want to do just as you do. And Jesus says, no, you can't do that. In fact, you say you're going to lay your life down for me, but I know you're about to deny me 3 times. I know you're about to fail in this. And so he points out to Peter that, your zeal is great, Peter. Okay? Your zeal is great. I appreciate it. Your zeal is necessary even to continue on. But your zeal isn't enough. Your zeal is not enough to bring you forward into what I'm talking about here. And so he points out this to Peter, and I think this makes a grand, a grand notion for us when we're trying to figure this out, is that I can be zealous, but zeal is not enough for me to walk as Christ gave me. And this new commandment, as he gives this to us, right? We've got 2 prime examples amidst the disciples of problematic thinking when it comes to obeying this new command. Judas is the antithesis to that new command, right? Because Judas seeks for himself. Judas makes the decisions that serve himself and not Jesus and not the disciples. He doesn't love. He doesn't love them as Jesus loved them. He loves himself more than them. And so, he doesn't even follow the old command in that. And so Judas is the antithesis of this new command, and we need to be on guard against that same behavior. We need to be on guard that I am not serving myself over you. That I am not serving myself in a way that puts you below me, that puts my needs above yours, and that causes harm to you so that I can get me in line. And boy, have we known people like this in our life, right? Who I will do for me before I do for you. I will take advantage of whatever situation, and if it harms you, I don't care because I got mine. Have you not met people like this? Have you not met people with this attitude? And Judas, again, is the example of that in the midst of Jesus and his most faithful believers. We've got to be on guard because it can persist even when we strive to be close to Jesus, can it? Because Judas went through all the things that all the other disciples went through. Judas went through all the things that left a lot of people walking away, didn't it? And yet he comes to this point where, no, at the end of the day, I'm going to serve me over you. All right? But then we come to Peter. And Peter is a subtler example here because Peter is zealous. He wants to be like Jesus. He's gone through all these things. He believes in Jesus. He knows that Jesus has the words to eternal life. And he's saying, I'm willing to do whatever I need to so I can be closer to you. And yet, when the chips are down, right? When it comes to, I actually have to make the sacrifice to proclaim Jesus when it could cost me my life, Peter skips out on that bill, doesn't he? He skips out on paying that. He says, nah, that's okay. I'm too scared of that. And it's subtler because we can sit here, and I tell you, right, talk is cheap. All right? We can sit here and say, I want to follow Jesus in my life. I want to be more like him. I want to mold my life to the scriptures. I want to walk and talk the way he did. I want to love you like Jesus loved you. I want to sacrifice for you. We can say all those things, but when the chips are down, what's coming to fruition? Right? What is actually being produced in the life and the way we walk and talk? What's actually coming out? Because what comes out when we are like Peter in that zeal, without the commitment, without the proper knowledge, without understanding, we can find ourselves in a place where we do the very thing that Judas did in the crux of the matter. And it's hard to know what we'll do in the crux of the matter when all we're talking is our zeal. We kind of need to be honest with ourselves that says, if the chips are down, I might just skip out because that's a hard thing. We need to be honest with that so that we can be ready to face it as Jesus faced it, right? Because Jesus faced that. He said, I'm willing, right? He says, I'm the servant. I'm laying my life down for the sheep. I'm willing to serve and wash your feet. I'm going to give you this new commandment that you love as I have loved. And when he says, I have loved, he hasn't gone to the cross yet, but when he meets the cross, when he meets the road to the cross, and as he struggles in that, because he's going to go to the garden and he's going to say, I don't want to do this, Lord, but your will over my will. When Jesus goes through all of that and faces all of that, he follows through with that service. He follows through because he's dedicated. And part of that is because I think Jesus went to it with his eyes wide open. He doesn't just live on his zeal. He doesn't just live on this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. Of course I'm going to love you. No, he comes eyes open saying, this is going to be awful. This is going to be the worst. I kind of don't want to do this if I'm being honest with myself. But you know what? I'm going to do it because I know whose will is more important. That's the nature of a service. That's a nature of a life that loves as Jesus loved. Be honest with yourself. It might not be the funnest thing in the world to serve as Christians, okay? It might not be the greatest. But I think that as we love as Jesus loved, as we live that life, as we go through that, the end result is still way better. The end result is still way finer. And if we are all servants as Jesus is servants, and we can give up a little dignity so that I can wash your feet when necessary, or whatever the modern equivalent might be. If I can put myself through that, and I can put myself in that place, and you will do the same for me as we see that happening, then when it comes to the harder things, right? The harder things that says, you know what? I got to tell you, you're not doing right here, right? The harder things that might say, you know what? It's a really hard thing that you lost your home, as we just saw an example, right? And you know what? I don't know that I can put myself through the aggravation with you of helping you, but no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what I can to help you out. I don't know that the church is going the direction I want to go with things. I don't know that this is the right way. And you know what? I think I might need to say something that things aren't going. Or maybe it's, the church is really trying to do something, right? The congregation is trying to make something happen. How can I help? How can I be a part of that? And you know what? That might take some commitment I don't necessarily like. That might take some time that I don't necessarily want to give. That might be hard at moments. I might feel discouraged. I might feel tired. But you know what? I'm going to do it. You know why? Because I think that's what's going to be beneficial for the church. Right? That's the attitude I think that invokes when we talk about loving as Jesus loved, serving as Jesus served. And so as we take that on, as we look through that, and we decide not to ignore it, but to go head on into it, I think we find ourselves, when we love like Jesus, right, that we are willing to take on service. We are willing to take on tasks that maybe didn't seem like they were great tasks to begin with. Maybe they weren't fun, but you know what? It does some fundamental things that need to get done. We're willing to sacrifice our dignity for each other. And what's our dignity worth really? What's our dignity worth really that I need to save it and let you suffer without your needs met? That's really, the idea here is if we're willing to put ourselves through that sacrifice. Jesus put it through that sacrifice, went through the worst of the worst death that he could possibly imagine. And what's that for? It's for his own glory, but it's for our glory because we get to be with him. Right? He gets to redeem all of us. That's the way that is. And so this morning, as we look at that commitment, are we really committed to being here and putting that dignity on the chopping block? Are we willing to put that up for sacrifice so that we might see our betterment? I don't know what that looks like as you look at that today. As you're looking at this and saying, how can I be more like Jesus in this? How can I serve? I can tell you that Kibler has opportunities to take your dignity so you can do something. So if you want it, we'll give it to you. We can do all sorts of things when we're willing to address that and we're willing to walk in that way. There's so much more we can accomplish if we're willing to put that up. And this morning, I want to say is the first way that begins, the first way that starts is our walk with Christ. Our dignity goes on it goes on the chopping block. It goes up. It's up when we decide, I'm going to die to myself, I'm going to give up this life I've been living so that I can live the life He gave me. And when we decide to do that, that's us dying to ourselves, repenting. And Jesus says, come to me, be baptized, be raised, so that you can have that newness of life. That's the offer. That's what's on the block for you to take if you want it. But that's how you do it. You have to be able to give up your dignity by saying, I'm going to die to myself. This morning, if there's any way, if there's anything that you need to hear, see, or talk about, pray about to get you to that decision, that's the start of your journey with Christ. But I'm here to say is that if there's any other way that we can show you what service is like, we show you what it is to love like Christ, we want those opportunities. We want you to share with us how we can do that. Because it takes understanding your life. It takes walking with you in your shoes to be able to love you the way you need to be loved, love you in the way that Christ wants to love you. But let us know what those opportunities are this morning as we stand and we sing.